Welcome, everyone. Great to see you here. In the brief time we have, I thought I would contrast two versions of the Requiem, Fauré's and Verdi's Requiem. There are five that are most commonly done by choirs like ours, the Mozart, of course, the Berlioz, which we've done, which comes not too long, a couple decades after the Mozart, um, the Verdi Requiem, the Faure Requiem, and the Dörfler Requiem. And I was actually surprised to find out when I was preparing for this that the Faure Requiem and the Verdi Requiem were written in the same decade, the 1870s, under very different circumstances. Faure was 30 years younger than Verdi. Verdi was 60 when he was writing his, and obviously in the mature part of his career, Faure was only 30. He didn't write his for a particular occasion, but Verdi did write his for an occasion. Verdi was very politically active and very much an Italian nationalist. He wanted the unity of all the disparate Italian states and the different entities that control them. And so he conceived of a requiem in honor of Rossini that would have different movements written by different composers, one of them by him, and the one he chose to write was Libera Me, with its political implications. Free me, Lord, from the time to come. And I'm first going to share that text with you. This text is not actually part of the Requiem Mass itself. It's for the burial rite. It's sung or said, chanted while the coffin is being blessed before it is left into the ground. And Verdi set this, Faure set this, Mozart did not set this particular prayer, but it contains three very distinct elements. The first part, Libera me Domine de morte eterna, deliver me, Lord, from death eternal on that dreadful day. The second stanza, Tremens factos sum ego, I am seized by trembling. And then the third, Dies illa, Dies irae, the famous Dies irae prayer that is the famous part of different requiems, going back to Mozart's with a dramatic recreation of the end of time. So I thought it would shed light on Fauré's distinctive take if we listen to the three parts of this back to back. So here, first we'll listen to Verdi's version of the first part, which is the Libera Me section. This is with the Romanian soprano Angela Georgiou and the eminent Italian conductor Claudio Abbado with the Berlin Philharmonic. This is a French performance conducted by a French conductor whose name is not in front of me right now, but I will look it up. Laurence Equilbe. Okay, so very different, as you could hear. Certainly Verdi, of course, was primarily an opera composer, almost exclusively so. He didn't write symphonies. He didn't write songs that were more than just settings of melodies, whereas Faure was primarily a composer of songs and chamber music, and this was the biggest piece he wrote. So his setting of the Liber a Me sounds like a call to battle. It sounds like an opera scene where the chorus is being called to pay attention, to get ready, to call for deliverance, and something dramatic or earth-shaking is going to happen. Faure instead has this very long, extended, noble solo melody that the choir will sing at the end. Fairly simple orchestration, just low strings. You hear pizzicati from the basses and cellos, and the melody sung by the baritone soloist. And there's a certain sense of drama to it, but it's much more personal, much more intimate, much more. He's not calling the masses. It's more of a prayer between the soloist and his God. Now, the second section, Tremens Factus Est, has to do more with the response of the people, how they respond to this need for liberation, and in this case, the fear of death, wanting to be released from that. So let's listen to what Verdi has to say first. It's my favorite instrument, the bassoon. And of course, there we hear the tremens, the agitation in the orchestra, all this busyness in the strings going up and going down, and again, a dramatic character singing from the standpoint of one person in the midst of a larger cataclysm, and concluding just the words "timeo" and "I fear" at the very end. Now let's listen to Faure's very different rendition of the same thing with minimal orchestration, with the chorus, and it's really up to the conductor to evoke in these simple notes, these long notes, a sense of fear and trembling. Okay, so I mean that's one of my favorite passages in the Fauré is that Tremens passage because it conveys this sense of vulnerability and in the midst of a vast world, and yet an intimacy at the same time. Not the sense that you're where our friends in Ukraine are now in the middle of bombs falling everywhere, but at the same time a larger sense of, uh, of of the fear and anxiety that is evoked. The third section, Dies Irae, is interesting because this is often, again, going back to even Mozart's Requiem, the most famous part of a Requiem, in that it's usually where you pull out all the stops literally and get the full orchestra or multiple brass choirs involved. It's the end of time from a long liturgical prayer called the sequence, which only happens in um, the Requiem Mass. It's not part of any other liturgical statement, and it comprises the bulk of most requiems. Faure ignores it altogether. So he doesn't do the Dies Irae in the place where it normally happens fairly close to the beginning. In fact, he leaves it to the end where he has the Libera Me, um, uh, which contains it. So he's able to do it in a smaller way, uh, but still very powerfully. And then he concludes it by coming back to the opening Libera Me melody, this time with the whole choir singing, whereas before it was only the soloist. Um, but Verdi's is probably the most famous version of it. Um, and this, we truly have a sense of being in the midst of a cataclysm. Here we are with Mr. Abato. Again, you notice too, this is a fairly, it's not that old a recording, so this is towards the very end of Abato's own career. He looks fairly gaunt uh, conducting. So here's Fauré's version of the same day of wrath, day of vengeance text. And he already moves into the next part of the text. We turn to the Requiem text. May light perpetual shine upon them. And now comes back the Libera Me melody, which is a repeat that's not in the text. This is Fauré's choice. Faure makes the Dies Irae statement. Here you hear it with full orchestra. That's the later version that was arranged by his students who felt that the original reduced orchestration was not big enough, not grand enough. But his original concept is much more intimate. The Libera Me melody is sung by the whole choir this time, but it's sung marked piano dolce, softly and sweetly for the entire melody. The entire occurrence of this is only a slight crescendo in the middle, and then it comes back. So again, much more personal, much more intimate. And it's also interesting that Faure is not writing this for a particular cause. He's not even writing it for a particular occasion. His mother had died a few years earlier, and some people think that may have inspired him, but he says that he just wrote it because he felt compelled to write it. And so it's a much more personal statement. He also finishes the Requiem with a text that is also part of the burial rite and not part of the Requiem Mass itself. So it's not included by Mozart, it's not included by Verdi, but it is included by Faure, the In Paradisum, where the soprano section sings the final text of the deceased entering into paradise. May the angels lead you, and upon your arrival, welcome you with the martyrs. And again, a very subdued setting of that music. So that's, I think those three sections of this one movement that the two pieces have in common and the very different approaches to it tell us something about Faure. What's fascinating too is that I think both pieces, again written 150 years ago at around the same time, in one in Paris and the other in Milan, not that far from each other. You could go between them with an afternoon's train ride, in very, very different styles. And both of them have been extremely popular with audiences since then. I think you'd be hard pressed to say which gets more performances, the Faure or the Verdi. And the Verdi is harder to perform, except with a full symphony orchestra and choir. We've done it at the Choral Society. Um, the Faure is frequently done by churches because it works very well with organ and just with low strings, like we're doing with violas, cellos, basses. two French horns, and harp, with sometimes with organ as well. And both of them are equally popular. People are drawn to both for different reasons. One with a much more cosmic sense, and one with a much more personal sense. Any thoughts or questions for we? This is just a half-hour session. But any thoughts you have about how the two different pieces strike you, or what they say to you?
And I think we can unmute ourselves. We're a small enough group that we can
Yeah.
trust ourselves with that.
Right. Yeah.
I find it strange that I love both pieces. They appeal to different parts of me, and I love them equally, but it's just a strange reaction that I find in myself.
Maybe it's because it can be performed by churches and smaller ensembles. I'm actually surprised to learn that the Verdi is equally performed, but are popular. I'm not sure, Tom, which word you used, but and I also have a bias, personal bias toward the Faure. For the PAUs who's going to sing that.
Yeah, Eva Martinez is going to sing it, and I've coached her on it already, and I can say she has made amazing progress in the 3 years since she won our Voices of the Future competition. She's at the Manhattan School, and she is more together vocally and musically than any singer of her age that I've heard in a long time. So it's going to be very exciting to hear her rendition of this.
That was the first year where Alice and I actually sat in on the finals. And let's just say we got interested in that program.
Right. No, she definitely has it together. If there's no other thoughts, I thought I would close with this is a very rough read through of a national hymn or song of Ukraine called Prayer for Ukraine that we're going to add to our program. We're going to begin the program with this and then go to the Faure, and then after intermission to my new piece, Appearances, which we'll talk about next week. I got the score for this from a colleague, Julia Zadevsky, who teaches at Curtis and directs the Nashira, which is a Jewish choir in Philadelphia that I hope to collaborate with in the next couple of years. And she is Ukrainian and sent this along. So that was the words for this hymn are quite amazing. There are love for country, but not in the least bit um, military or I can't think of the right word. God Almighty, protect our beloved Ukraine. Bless her with the freedom and light of your holy rays. With learning and knowledge, enlighten us, your small children, in love pure and everlasting. Lord, let us grow. How many hymns do you know? National hymns that say, let us grow. Grant our people and country your kindness and grace. Bless with freedom, bless us with wisdom, give peace to the world and happiness. Bless us, O God, with good fortune forever and forevermore. Can't think of a better prayer for the people of Ukraine or for our world. So thank you all very much for joining us. This will be posted on our website and on our YouTube channel. If you know anyone who would like to share it later, just send us our way, buckschoral.org. And we hope to see you again. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Tom.